Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're looking at solving equations with absolute value. So our learning targets today are: first, I can evaluate absolute value expressions. So we're going to learn what absolute value is and how to evaluate those expressions. And then second, I can solve absolute value equations. So we'll learn the process for doing that as well. So first, an absolute value expression example is we have something like this. These bars on the side mean absolute value. And what absolute value really is just a distance from zero. So if you think about it that way, the number 5, how far away is that from zero? Well, that's 5 away from zero. Negative 5 is also 5 away from zero. So the absolute value of negative 5 is going to be 5, and the absolute value of a positive 5 is also going to be 5. So absolute value, think of it as just a distance from zero, so it's always going to be a positive amount. So if we look at this example right here, the absolute value of x plus 2 minus 3 if x equals 2. So we can rewrite that now with x being 2, so we'll have inside the absolute value signs, we'll have 2 plus 2. And from that answer, we're going to subtract 3. And that's how we would evaluate this expression. So 2 plus 2 is 4. And the absolute value of 4 is going to just remain as 4. So we have 4 minus 3, and that's going to be equal to 1. So evaluating this expression, when x equals 2, so that means we replace x with 2, and then we evaluate that expression and find out that 2 plus 2 is going to be 4, and the absolute value of 4 is still going to be 4. So 4 minus 3 is 1. So that's how we evaluate expressions that contain absolute value. And typically what will happen is, in the problems you'll see, is you'll be given a specific value for x that you're supposed to include in here to be able to evaluate that absolute value expression. Okay, now let's look at now steps for solving absolute value equations. First thing we want to do is we want to create two equations. We want to set what's inside the absolute value bars equal to the positive and to the negative of what's not in the absolute value bars. In other words, what's on the other side of the equation. We're going to set it equal to that. Okay, so next we solve each equation. We have two equations now. We solve each of them, and we should end up with two possible solutions. And then we need to graph the solutions on a number line if we're asked to do so. We won't always be asked to do that, but sometimes we will, so we need to be able to graph that as well. So those are the three basic steps we're going to be taking. I'll leave them up here for just a second. And certainly you guys can pause the video whenever you need to as well. So if you follow those three steps, though, you'll be able to solve absolute value problems rather easily. So now let's look at a specific example. So we have absolute value of x minus 2 equals 6. So now we'll have two cases. Case 1 says whatever's inside these absolute value symbols is going to be equal to 6. So x minus 2 equals 6. And the other thing we'll say is whatever is inside these absolute value symbols is going to be equal to negative 6. Okay, and there's a way I can prove to you that this will work. Basically, when we take the absolute value of something, think of it this way. Everything inside of here has two possible options. It either is going to equal 6 or it's going to equal negative 6. Because the absolute value of 6 is going to be 6 and the absolute value of negative 6 is also going to be 6. Those are the only two cases that you will come up with an absolute value of 6. So let's just focus on case 1 for right now. So then if x minus 2 equals 6, then we're going to add 2 to both sides and we get x equals 8. That's one option. In case 2, if x minus 2 equals negative 6, we're going to add 2 to both sides, and we're going to get x equals negative 4. So there are always going to be two cases when you're solving an absolute value equation, and you just set them both up, solve them, and these are the two possible answers then. X is going to be 8 or x is going to be negative 4. And you can plug them in and see. If you said 8 minus 2 equals 6, the absolute value of 6 is going to equal 6. That works. If you said negative 4 minus 2 is going to be negative 6, the absolute value of negative 6 is 6. That also works. Let's look at one more example. So we have 3x plus 5 equals 7. So case 1 is going to be 3x plus 5 equals 7. And case 2 is going to be 3x plus 5 equals negative 7. Again, same reasoning. Whatever the total amount of the stuff in here is, it's got to either equal 7 or negative 7 to have the absolute value be equal to 7 at the end. So let's focus on case 1 first. So if we subtract 5 from both sides, we're going to end up with 3x equals 2. And then if we divide both sides by 3, we'll end up with x equals 2/3. On the second case, if we subtract 5 from both sides, we'll have 3x equals negative 12. And then if we divide both sides by 3, we're going to end up with x equals negative 4. So our two possible options here are x equals 2/3 and x equals negative 4. So again, absolute value is just a distance away from 0. So in the end, an absolute value is always going to be positive. If you had a situation like this, say that this said that absolute value of 3x plus 5 equals negative 7. Say it said negative 7. That would be impossible, because the absolute value of something can never be a negative number. Think of it this way: a distance can never be negative. A distance is always going to be a positive amount. If you're measuring the distance between two objects, for example, it's always going to be a positive number. It's not possible to have a negative distance. Okay, so absolute value is the distance away from 0. Thanks very much for listening. I will look forward to seeing you in class very soon, and have a very good day, and we'll see you again very soon. Take care.